Well, hello there everyone. It's the start of the workshop. Okay, so just before I start, just a couple of things. My phone will only record for 25 minutes, so there might be 2 or 3 videos for you to watch today. The second thing is that in the file section, over there somewhere, there is chapter 2 for you to print off. Print it off, have a read through it. It won't mean hardly anything to you, I wouldn't imagine, because the instructions that I've done are to be used in conjunction with this video. I've done you a note section at the bottom so that you can write your own notes, so you can pause the video every so often and write notes as well, okay? When it comes to the instructions, I have referred to the thick card base. Now, as I've said, I'm going to stick 2 sheets of this 300 GSM card together to make my card base, right? So that's what we're going to cut the box pieces out of. You could be using grey board, you could be using serial packet, you could be using mount board, you could be using chipboard, but that's what I'm referring to when I say thick card base. When I refer to the lining card pieces, then that's when I'm actually referring to the file folders or craft card or black card that we're actually going to cover the bases with. So I'm referring to this card here. All right, those are the 2 main cards that I'm going to talk to you about throughout the instructions to start with. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is, if you're using really thick card, you need to glue those together, and I'm just going to use PVA glue. I've added a tiny drop of water to just make it a little bit more runny, and I'm sorry about the lighting. Ooh, oops. It was beautifully sunny earlier, now it's gone a little bit overcast, and I've had to put my lamp on over there, so it's forming shadows. So yeah, looking at the sky, that's not going to change. Okay, so I'm using a brush that has got get it in shot, has got a square flat edge to it, only because it's easier to get that right up to the edges of the card to place the glue. Alright, so this is a little bit like watching paint dry, me placing glue on card, but I did want to just show you how I did mine, just in case any of you were wondering. Now, because it is a liquid glue, it will make the card buckle a little. So once I've pasted glue all over it, and I mean all over it, so try not to leave any parts uncovered. Alright, but after we've glued it and we've stuck the other piece on top, then I'm going to sit it underneath one of my heavy books overnight to dry. Alright, you'll also find as well that, depending on where you are, this glue just might dry quite quickly, but it is just PVA white glue. I personally don't like to use double-sided tape because it kind of worries me that in years to come all my wonderful work that I have created will all start coming undone because the glue on the tape has dried. So you can see now I'm giving this a really good coat of glue to make sure that it's all well and truly covered. And my throat's not so good. Well, I say my throat, it's not my throat, it's the asthma part of me, but it's more in my throat that gives me a slightly huskier voice, I'm afraid. So if I start coughing, it's not germs I'm coughing, it's an asthma cough. But yeah, I can always tell when there's a storm coming because my asthma flares up. So that must be what's occurring. Okay, so that's now well covered, and I'm just going to sit one on top of the other and make sure that it meets at the corners. And that will now give that a nice contact and make that nice and firm. As I say, I would normally leave that to sit overnight to dry. Excuse me. But as if by magic, she tosses that to one side. Here's one I prepared earlier. So this has now made this sort of, it's still flexible, but it's made it a lot more solid. Okay. Next part then is each of the pieces that you will then need to cut. Now, what I did for you, which you might find a little bit easier, is I've actually drawn my pieces onto graph paper. Let me move that glue out the way. And then what I did then was I cut them out roughly, used a glue stick, not PVA glue, but a glue stick, on the back of the graph paper and attached it to a piece of card and then cut it out. So these are the pieces now cut out. You do not have to do this bit. If you haven't got some kind of paper trimmer, cutter, whatever, to be able to cut your card with, or if you're using a very, very thick card like mount board, that won't cut through your paper trimmer. These two sheets of card that I've stuck together will actually go through my paper trimmer. But if you can't get your card to go through a paper trimmer, then you might want to draw yourself some templates. So the pieces that you will need are, there will be two long sides to cut that measure 6 inch by 3.5 inch. There will be a base piece to cut that measures 6 inch by 3 3/8 inch, and there are two short sides that measure 3 3/8 inch by 3.5 inch. Now, can you see the way in which I've got them set up on the graph paper? I've done that for a reason. When I measured 6 inches that way, it took me to halfway through one of the squares. Well, what a pain in the bum that is. So I took it, instead of doing it halfway through the square, I took it onto the next square. So let me just show you a close-up. So instead of being halfway through this square here, I did it to the line of the square of the graph paper. So it means that your box is fractionally longer. I mean, it's a fraction. But then I had to make sure that this line here of this piece lined up with it as well. Okay, because this is also 6 inches long, and if I did that to 6 inches but I only did it halfway through the square, then that piece would be smaller than that, and that would be silly. So those two have to line up with each other there. All right, these all have to line up with each other, but that 6 inch measurement is the only one that was just slightly off from the graph paper. So as I say, I just extended it to the line of the graph paper further. As I say, then I used my glue stick, put glue stick on the back of that and stuck it to a piece of card and then cut them out. Now you can write all that information that I've just shown you onto the graph paper like I've shown you there. So you can put long side 6 inch by 3.5 inch. And the other thing that I did as well was I wrote top up there and I wrote top there. That will become self-explanatory later, because these two measurements are so close together that it's actually hard to tell which is the right way round once you've cut them out. Now once I cut them out, I then added this following information onto it. So on the long side, I added C there A2 there and C there. On the base piece I added A2, A1, A2, A1, and on the short piece I wrote B, B and A1. So that was the other additional information that I added onto it as well. In fact, what I forgot to write on these was top there and top there. Okay, you would then need a very sharp pencil to then place this template onto the card that you're going to use and to draw around it, making sure that the point of the pencil is pointing right to the inside edge of that card. So not upright, but pointing in, because then you know that you're drawing butt up to the edge of the actual template piece. Right, now, so for the long side you need 2 pieces. For the base you need 1 piece, and for the short sides you need 2 pieces. So there's a lot of information that you've written onto each of those templates. Now, as I say, if your card that you're using for the base of your box will go into your paper trimmer, you won't need to do any of these. If you are using chipboard, mount board, or any kind of thick board that will not go into your paper trimmer, do the templates. Okay, so at this point you can pause the video, if I lay them there, and you can copy all of that. Let me move them down. You can copy all of that information onto each of those template pieces. Oh, wobbling about. Okay. Okay. So then we need to cut out all of the pieces to form the box. So in the instructions it says, and here's the set I printed off earlier, it says cut your thick card base pieces to the following sizes. For the base we're going to cut 1 piece that measures 6 inch by 3 3/8. We're going to cut 2 long sides at 6 inch by 3 1/2, and we're going to cut 2 short sides 3 3/8 by 3 1/2. Alright, so that's the first step. So because I'm using A4 card, I know that I'm going to get 3 pieces out of this. So I'm going to cut the 6 inch, no I'm not, I'm going to cut the 3 3/8 inch first. 3 and 1 2 3. Sorry, you can't see that, can you? Let me move back and move that down. There we go. So 3 and 1 2 3. So 3 3/8, and make sure that your card is butt up against the lip of your paper trimmer. So that's one done. I'm going to cut another one, and these are the 2 long sides which need to be 3 1/2 inches. So 1 2 3 4. And another one, 3 1/2 inches. And that's spare. Now I'm going to turn each of these 3 pieces round and cut them to 6 inches. Again, making sure that this is butt up against that lip, and that bit is spare. I'm going to cut this next one to 6 inches. And the next one to 6 inches. Now, because each of these are going to be covered over, I can actually write on them. So these pieces are 3.5 inches deep, and this piece here, which you might be able to see, line it up, is fractionally shorter. So that one, the shorter one, is the base. This one is a long side, and this one is a long side. Couldn't spell then, I nearly wrote it wrong. Okay, so at the moment I've got 3 pieces. Now I'm going to get the next piece of card, and I need 2 pieces that measure 3 3/8 by 3.5. So I'm going to do the 3 and 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 3 3/8 first. That bit's now spare, and I'm going to turn that, and I'm going to do it to 3.5 inches. Now on this one, at this point, sorry, so I've cut that to 3 3/8. I'm now going to turn that round, and I'm going to write T for top there, and I'm now going to cut this to 3.5 inches because it's 3.5 inches tall. Oop. T in the wrong place, haven't I? I want my T there. So that's 3.5 inches that way. So that's the height. And 3.5 inches again. And write my T there for top. Okay. So I have now got one base, one long side, one long side. Let me see if I can get them all in shot. And then 2 of the shorter sides, which should fit there, and T on each end for top. Okay, so that's what you should have, and that's how it'll sit for when we come to put it together. The next thing that you then need to cut are the lining pieces. Okay, and I've already cut mine already. And so I have got 2 long pieces, got a base, and I've got the 2 sides, and the measurements are in the instructions for that. It also says distressing all the sides of each of these pieces. Now you will notice that these 4 outer pieces here are slightly longer than the white pieces underneath. Don't worry about that for now. That comes into the instructions later on. But I then distressed all the edges of the cards. Right? We now can put those to one side because we no longer need those for the moment. But that's in the next part of the instructions. That's instruction underneath this part here. Okay, it then says cut the lining hinges as 1 inch wide strips. The length at this point doesn't matter, but as long as you can. Then score and fold these long strips at 1/2 inch. Okay, I'm just going to move these out of the way a minute. And we'll come back to those in a second. And from my file folder, which is what I use because I like the colour of the craft card to go with the digital pattern that I'm using, but I like the file folder because it's a thin enough card that I can get a nice fold with it. Some craft card, because of the thickness of it, it actually doesn't bend as easily as the file folders do. But what I actually did here was I cut 1 inch wide strips, and then I creased or scored down the centre. So I'm just going to do a couple more, and I did them with all my scraps. So So this is the scrap part of the file folder that I've got. And if I look beyond this cutting point here, there's a 1 inch mark here. So if I line the edge of my card up here with that 1 inch, put the arm down, I've then got a 1 inch strip. And I've actually got quite a long 1 inch strip because this card is folded in half because of it being the file folder. If you'd got a sheet of A4, let's say, so if you were cutting it from a sheet of A4, you would cut your 1 inch strips that way because that would be the longest part that you could get out. You wouldn't want the 1 inch strips here because they're a bit too short, but you want them as long as you possibly can, so you would cut them that way on. I would then get my scalpel. Now I'm right-handed, so I'm actually going to place my card over in this corner because it is easier for me to draw on that side than it is to place it in this corner here. And to try and do that, I'm actually forcing my shoulder to get that in the right place. But over here I can do it naturally where I'm not stretching myself. And I'm going to do the 1/2 inch just part way down, and then I'm going to move my hand down because this strip, because it's so narrow, will slip across the board, and I want to make sure that I'm definitely doing down the center, and I'm just running it off the edge because this strip is so long I can't go any further down. But what I can then do is turn the strip around and do the other end, and they should meet up. So I've now got this really long 1 inch strip with the score line down the center so that I can fold those over. Okay, and you do as many of them as you can, because we don't just need them for this box, we'll need them for the next box as well. So it doesn't matter if you do too many. I just shifted a bit then, because they'll always come in handy for the next box. And then I'm going to twiddle that round and do from the other end. There we go. So now I've got a selection of strips to use up there. I've got glue all on my fingers. Didn't you used to love doing this at school? Peeling that glue off. Felt like you were peeling your skin off. Okay, come on Carol, back to it. So that first set of instructions that you've got here is all about cutting those pieces. Cutting these pieces and cutting those pieces. Now we can make a start. Oh, I'm at 23 minutes already, so I'm going to stop this video and I am going to go and upload this, and then I'll come back and then start to show you how to put that together. Alright, speak to you in a bit. Bye.